Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, and good night, I guess. And thanks for joining us, Pixie. We've got Space Cadet and we've got Hillary's emails here for the Badnarik after party.
What kind of party comes after a constitutional law class is what I want to know. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to find out.
Is it just me or was Space?
No, I was fixing to tell her, I understood you, but you might want to reset because it sounds like me when I get robotic. You know.
Oh, no.
But,
hold on.
Yeah.
Very crackly.
Yeah.
A very lame party.
Okay.
Answer your question.
I really want to get into the problems I had with what he said.
Yes, please. That's what we're here for.
Okay. First of all, the Supreme Court was not established with judicial review as its intended purpose. Okay. The Supreme Court limited itself. First, in Madison versus Monroe, because of the midnight appointments, where they sided with one side, but said they could not enforce it, right? So Madison Monroe did set a precedent for them limiting their scope, which really comes in handy when it comes to Marbury versus Madison. And he is correct. Marbury versus Madison is where judicial review is set. That's where that is decided. But the reason it's decided to limit its scope again is actually to save face for John Marshall. Because what was happening is, again, he gets a case where he agrees that legally one side wins, but in order to say that, he has to go against his party and kill everything he's working for. Because at this time, there's a big debate about spirit of the law versus letter of the law, which I will not get into. You are free to look into that. Jefferson was on one side. We'll go that way. But anyway, so big debates, all this stuff. So instead of giving his opponents the legal win, he says, the Supreme Court is supposed to be here for judicial review. This is what we're supposed to do. Therefore, that's outside my jurisdiction and not our problem, right? So to say that it was set up with that intent and that intent didn't come later is very misleading. Also, he speaks about the differences in common English law versus Spanish law with heavy, heavy bias, and it shows. It's not, neither had this inherent value of rights. Neither system did. That's what the Bill of Rights was for. We added that in to the Constitution in order for the Constitution to be ratified. Why? Because it was not inherent before that. So that's misleading. The difference between common law, English law, and Spanish law is that English law is decided on precedents. It's one court case to the next court case to the next court case with building precedents. And in Spanish law, you did have codes. Now, what is a code? He was also very misleading about that. A law becomes codified when laws are arranged by subject matter. So when a law gets combined by the subject matter with other laws of the same subject, both previous and current, then it becomes codified. These laws become code, right? And the reason you code them is because it's dealing with a specific subject matter and it's keeping various laws together as they are added. Now, neither system is perfect. And some of our states are more heavily influenced by common law, and some of our states are more heavily influenced by the Spanish code law, which derived from Romans, right? Okay, now, the fact that there is a code law isn't necessarily saying you don't have rights. So some of those codes are there to protect the rights of the people, right? To make sure things are done uniformly. We use both. Again, you can usually tell which state is more heavily influenced by which direction by taking one simple civil law idea, and that is divorce. I know, really weird, right? But you can tell which one your state is influenced by, whether you live in a marital property state or an equitable division state. So he spoke with that with very, very big amounts of bias. Yes, and I thought that that was kind of weird.
Yeah. No, that's I can't really argue against that. I sort of noticed that myself, but I don't know that I noticed so much that it was biased till you sort of pointed it out. So that's Monroe versus Madison.
Madison versus Monroe is not nearly as important to judicial review as Marbury versus Madison. I will give him that. What Madison v. Monroe did was set the precedent of the court limiting its own scope, deciding its jurisdiction. When it said, "You're right, we should make him do this, but we can't make him do this, so we're not gonna."
So this is why I asked about amendments. Because in 1909, it was passed and then ratified in February 1913, the 16th Amendment established Congress's right to impose a federal income tax.
Mm-hmm. And who all voted on that? That's the problem. It was, my understanding was, it was done late at night after most everybody had gone home. So there wasn't a quorum of electors, so they couldn't do it.
Really?
That's my understanding, but I've also heard that they sent it around to the states later and had them sign it. So if that's true, that may have been a way around it.
Do you think our society? Well, that's off subject. I'll ask later.
Someone boot. Was Midnight. Welcome, Midnight.
Hello.
Hello. It says here, in 1909, progressives in Congress again attached a provision for an income tax to a tariff bill. Conservatives, hoping to kill the idea for good, proposed a constitutional amendment enacting such a tax. They believed an amendment would never receive ratification by 3/4 of the states.
Mm-hmm.
Much to their surprise, the amendment was ratified by one state legislature after another. And in February 1913, with the certification by Secretary of State, the 16th Amendment took effect. Yet in 1913, due to generous exemptions and deductions, less than 1% of the population paid income taxes at the rate of only 1% of net income. So they eased them into it. It's like, look, guys, it's not that bad.
It's like a drug dealer.
Yep. And here we are, a couple hundred years later, and people are arguing as to why they should be paying tax.
Well, I think it's actually, if you boil it down to things, we're still having the same argument our forefathers were having: letter of the law versus spirit of the law,
Mm-hmm.
and the interpretations that come with it.
And do you think that it has to be both in different circumstances? Like, we
Have you
can't.
seen the arguments for either side? I know it's probably very U.S. centric, so probably not. it's I want to say I lean towards Jefferson's side, but Jefferson I appreciate because I share this complete just flippancy towards hierarchy and authority that Jefferson had. He was quite defiant. For all his flaws, I appreciate his absolute defiance and his need to learn. I think he leaned very, very heavily towards the letter of the law side, which is where I lean towards. I don't like the spirit of the law arguments. I get that our Constitution was made to be amendable and that they were supposed to meet every 10 years to discuss amendments. I get stuff like that. But at the same time, the problem with making it spirit of the law is when you start making it spirit of the law, you get to start adding in and taking away a bunch of things. And where it, like, okay, law is this very hard thing. You don't want to be so specific that you kill nuance and you hurt people that don't need to be hurt. But you don't want to be so vague that it can be reinterpreted over and over again. And my problem with the spirit of the law is that you can take a law that was intended for one thing and you can reinterpret it and bring in a whole new scope. And so when that happens, is it really the spirit of the law? Or did you just change everything because you could fit it in based on your interpretation of the spirit of that law, right? So I wouldn't say that it's not that both aren't needed. I would say I heavily lean one way for a reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think spirit of the law is mainly, well, you know what we meant type of argument. And no, I don't know what you meant, only what you said.
Well, there is a need for it in certain instances. And the reason I say that is because that concept actually came in handy in the civil rights movements, right? Mm-hmm. Because they would say, because in addressing a lot of like Jim Crow laws and things like that, because they would say, oh, it's not illegal because it says the states can do this. And they say, yes, but the spirit of the law says this. And then the letter of the law says this. And this incorporates all people. So they played, well, I guess it wouldn't have killed the movement, though, because they did play both sides. They played the letter of the law side and all men are created equal. And the spirit of the law side, that just because it wasn't granted didn't mean that it could be prohibited in that way. Which I guess only really matters on a social level, not a legal level, because legally they still had to go back to the letter of the law. It's a weird thing. So I guess socially or legally, I guess I'd say. I just remembered y'all couldn't see all the information flashing through my head, so that probably looked like a mess to you. Spirit of the law comes in handy when you're getting social engagement, but by the time you take it to the court, leave that shit out of it. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So, what's going on? I know what's going on. I just feel like asking. How you guys doing?
So, okay. I have a question. Do you think our society encourages debt?
Yes.
That's directed at me or
anyone?
I think we're run on debt.
I mean, yeah, like if you got bad credit score, you're like, oh, that person has bad credit score, so they're not.
It's that, but it's not even bad credit, right? Because credit score fine. I could say they're not encouraging debt. It's up to you to use your credit responsibly, right? But I think what puts that in the catch-22 is knowing that having zero credit is worse than having bad credit. And in that aspect, I think it encourages debt.
I mean, if you have bad credit, you can fix it. If you have no credit, you can build it. But you're right. It does seem that you have zero credit. Well, what the fuck are you doing with your life?
No, let me put it this way. I'll put it this way. When I was younger, I was very determined. I was never going to have any debt. And that comes from my background. I grew up ridiculously poor, right? And I did not care if I had fancy things or nice things. My goal was, we're going to get through this without owing shit, right? And so I was a student. Well, I did have student loan debt. I did have that, but I paid it all off. So because I only used what I absolutely needed. So I did have some student loan debt, but I was working. I bought my car from another individual in cash, and I loved that car. I missed it. It was old. It was like a 93 Honda with a steel body frame, but that thing was badass. Anyway, like I did everything like that, right? And so everything was bought in cash from my money. I could prove I had a job. I could prove I had a stable job. I could prove I held down my job. I could prove I paid all my bills. I could prove I paid for my car. I could prove all of that. But none of it mattered. I couldn't apply to buy a house because I didn't have credit. And they straight up told me that it would be easier to get a home loan if I had terrible credit than it would be for them to walk in there with all the information I gave them and get a loan for a home.
Yeah.
Right. And I was in my late 20s. And the only reason I gave up that stupid 93 Honda for a new car was because I had to build credit to move forward. Right. But that made me so mad.
Well, that's what they should be teaching in high school. Everyone should get like a $500 loan or something for a used car, for their first car, and then pay it off.
Hey,
Just to
Hillary,
monthly payments.
just come on, man. You should be teach this. I mean, they should teach us in high school, but you know as well as I do that the school system. Okay, go ahead.
No, that the school system what?
That the school, that the school system, was just a was just created to churn out workers for the Industrial Revolution.
That's true.
They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about people who are well informed or ask questions.
Partly for the industrial, it was a lot for the Industrial Revolutions, but it was also set up with a lot of eugenics. But that's why you have to do like the raise your hand, timed bathroom breaks, bells, all of it. It was getting them ready for factories. But
sorry for the tangent, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, but some schools are starting to introduce that. I shouldn't say this live because I don't want to give financially irresponsible people ideas. Well, they probably already have them. So
just say this is not advice.
Yeah, this is not advice. And Super Munchkin doesn't know. I'm only saying this because she's not home right now. So what we did was we opened up a line of credit for her that she doesn't know about. And occasionally we'll make a purchase on hers instead of ours, and then slowly pay it off. That way, when she gets to, and it's not like all the time, almost everything's on ours. It's just every now and then. That way, when she is like college, getting an apartment, moving out, getting a car, any of that, she is going to have stellar credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was 13 when I got my first checking account, and it was to build credit. And then my mom put me on her Discover card, and then after like a couple of years, she took her name off of it. So that was my first line of credit.
Yeah, she has her own bank account. She has for a while. She works. So she has her own bank account. She actually has her own savings account. She probably has more in savings than anybody her age. And she's very responsible. Out of each check, she puts some. She automatically throws a portion of her check in savings every time she gets paid. So like she has
Yeah,
all.
good mother. What do you expect?
She's got all. She's taking care of her bank and her savings account, but she has no idea about the credit card thing. And she doesn't need to for now.
I think if you've taught your child well and not to be silly with credit, that the I don't know what you have in America, but we have like Zip Pay and what else is it? Afterpay, and generally when you first sign up, the limit's like $500.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've been on the system for so long and you can show that you pay it back, they'll raise it to $1,000, or I think I've got limits of like $2,000 on mine and stuff. But they generally will give you an option to like pay it back in 4 payments, for instance. Just
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know if we have. I'm sure we have something like that, but I'm sure it depends on the bank. I'm sure it varies slightly from bank to bank.
Yeah.
Like I know we have what we call minor accounts that have certain restrictions, but operate mostly like an account.
And you have an adult cosigner.
Yeah, there's an adult cosigner on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that those small, they're not credit cards as such, but they are.
It's more like a debit card.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
And only certain places accept certain ones as well. So they're kind of limited, although in Australia now, Zip Pay and Afterpay are everywhere.
I think we taught her a little bit different because of the minor accounts here. You're right. Like some places don't take it. It doesn't always work the way it should when she's going places. So she's learned her own credit system, right? First, I wanted her to learn about money, and she did that with her accounts and buying things for her and her friends. She was like, Mom, it doesn't go very far. And I'm like, it doesn't. She's like, now I know what you mean, you know? And then I let her start. So her crediting system is with us, right? She'll be like, Mom, I'm in a hurry. I can't go by the bank, and this place doesn't take my card, but I have to pick up this thing. She's like, where's the ledger? Yes, she knows the word ledger. Where's the ledger? And I'll bring it out, and she'll be like, minus this or plus this. And she keeps track. Like anytime she lends me money, like if I forgot